Mr. President, this week we're considering the bipartisan farm bill. The Senator from Mississippi that just presided, and you and I were all raised on farms, and so we have an immediate sense that this must be pretty important because of where we grew up and how we grew up. But I think there's less and less connection that people have now with what it really takes to grow the food and fiber that we need in this country. And the Farm Bill doesn't have quite the same resonance that it used to have in terms of millions and millions and millions of families watching carefully to see what the Congress was going to do. In fact, the families that watch this most closely today may very well be the families that benefit from the nutrition parts of the Farm Bill. The vast majority of spending is in the nutrition parts of the Farm Bill. And the truth is that if you don't have what people need to sustain themselves, nutrition policy really doesn't matter unless what we do in agriculture works. And so a lot of the debate here is about that. In my state, in Missouri, we have nearly 100,000 farms. The vast majority of those farms are family-owned. They cover two-thirds of the real estate, two-thirds of the total land of our state. Industry supports 400,000 jobs in a state of 6 million people, so it's a substantial impact on what we do. We're located, you and I both, Mr. President, the Mississippi River Valley is the biggest piece of contiguous agricultural ground in the world, and we're in the middle of that. In terms of production, Missouri ranks second in the numbers of beef cows, fourth in rice, fifth in turkeys, sixth in soybeans, seventh in hogs, ninth in corn, and 10th in cotton. So there are all kinds of places in the Farm Bill that impact where we are in all of those crops and others that we might not rank quite so high in, but still are an important part of our economy. World food demand is expected to double in the next 30 years or so. That's really an easy thing to say. It's an easy thing to hear. It's sort of a hard thing to think about. All the time that people have been trying to develop better and better agriculture, we think about 10,000 years, it took us that long to raise all the food we raise today. We have about 30 years to figure out how to raise twice as much food as we raise today, and we are likely to need to do that on no more land than we're doing it on now, and with fewer inputs. So we need to work, we need to do that in a way that probably uses not just less water per amount of food grown, but just less water totally. And not just less fertilizer, but less fertilizer per crop, but less fertilizer totally. And so we're going to have a lot of science-based work going on to figure out how we meet this incredible opportunity and challenge of doubling all the food that we grow. I saw some FFA students out under a big shade tree looking back at the Capitol 2 different days last week, and both times I said, I really can't think of any group I could talk to where I could say with such certainty that no matter what you do, understanding agriculture in the next 30 years is a part of our economy that's going to be twice as big the day you retire from whatever you decide to do than it was the day you started. It would take some cataclysmic event for that not to be true. I said just a minute ago, world food demand would double in about 30 years. We think world food need will double in 40 years. And what's the difference? In 40 years, we have to have just that much food to feed all the people there are to feed. We think in 30 years, it will have to have doubled to meet people's demand for the kind of food they want to buy. But no matter what, in 40 years, twice as much food will be needed as we have today. This Farm Bill gives us a chance to really advance the kinds of policies that allow us to meet that challenge. The bill is a bipartisan bill. Chairman Roberts has worked hard to produce this bill. Senator Stabenow, The top Democrat on the committee has worked hard to produce this bill. Like all pieces of bipartisan legislation, it's not the bill that either of them would have written on their own, but it is a bill that can and should pass. It makes difficult decisions on how to balance priorities and how to maintain budget discipline at the same time. It's logically connected, of course, with helping those who grow our food, the people who determine whether or not we have an affordable and dependable supply of food and fuel and fiber. All of that is at stake in this legislation. The farm bill we're considering provides certainty for farmers. Like the farm bill we did 5 years ago, it takes a different course. It stays where we were. This is more evolutionary than a big revolutionary change. 5 years ago, we went much more toward risk management, where basically the federal government helps put an insurance kind of component together where you can insure against the many things that happen in the life of a farm family and the life of growing food. Don't control the weather, don't control the prices, don't control much of anything. You've just got to hope that everything works out and allows you to continue to do something that, in the case of almost all farm families in America, they love to do, and that's why they do it. The bill makes forward-looking investments to help new farmers and beginning farmers. You know, the average age of farmers in America today is almost 60. That means half the farmers are over 60 and half the farmers are under 60. Obviously, you've got to be concerned. We're concerned about pilots because we say, well, gee, pilots are running out of pilots because the military-trained pilots are not going to be available to us. We're also about to run out of farmers. If half the farmers in the country today are over 60, we need to be looking for things that allow beginning farmers to farm, to meet the needs as well as the opportunity of a growing world where with fewer resources and the same amount of land, as I said before, we're going to have this great opportunity. And by the way, nobody in the world is better at this than we are. And nobody in the world is better positioned than we are to get ag products all over the world. This is a huge opportunity for our country. And again, in my state, the one I know more about than I know about any other state, we're the home of really world-class animal and plant scientists. There are more plant scientists within 100 miles of St. Louis, Missouri than there are anywhere else in the world in that same amount of space. The Farm Bill will continue to allow those things to move forward and try to, again, do more with less, produce a better quality product with less inputs. As farmers deal with the unpredictability of the weather and the market, this is designed to help provide stability as that market grows. Now, let's go back to where I was just a minute ago. If you're thinking about this, what I believe is the biggest economic transactional group in America any given day, people buying food, fuel, and fiber that relates to agriculture, and that's all going to double in less than one working lifetime. That is almost never going to work out exactly right. The weather won't be right. The world crops won't be what you thought they were going to be. We want to be sure that people don't give up on this opportunity because it's also such a big challenge. And how do you communicate in a world environment with this kind of challenge? So the bill also makes investments in rural America to expand high-speed broadband and improve rural infrastructure, something that the president in every discussion I've heard on infrastructure, we talked about 25% of this needs to go to rural infrastructure, but part of that infrastructure is wireless technology, wireless infrastructure. If you're going to have precision farming, if you're going to be in the not putting more of cost into parts of your field than you should be, You and your equipment need to know exactly where you are, and I mean precisely where you are. You can't do that if you're not connected to broadband in some way. The GPS systems, the data centers, the automation systems just don't work without that. If you don't have high-speed internet, you don't have high-speed commodity trading capacity. So while somebody else, maybe 10 miles down the road from you, has instantaneous ability to take advantage of a market to buy or sell, yours may be just slow enough that you miss the moment. And so the ability to live in rural America, the ability to thrive in rural America, the ability to farm like you're going to need to farm for the world we're about to get into is really important. This farm bill isn't just about economic security, that's a big part of it, but it's also about what it takes daily to sustain yourself and those you care about. The nutrition programs, as I said to start, are now a significant majority of farm bill spending, and we're going to debate how some of that money should be spent. But Mr. President, we're entering into a time of great opportunity here, a time where Americans are really good, and particularly in the middle of the country, Americans are really good when you have an economy that's production-oriented, that's based on growing things and making things, and that growing things economy is a lot bigger than just production agriculture. It's production agriculture, it's food processing, it's ensuring what happens on the farm, it's transportation. We're one incident away from it being identifying where all that food has been all the time. And so I think the Farm Bill, I'm glad we're getting to it as quickly as we are. I hope we can pass our bill, come to conference with the House, and put a bill on the President's desk as soon as possible, so that with all of the other things that farmers and their families have to deal with, the one thing they'll know with some certainty is what the federal Farm Bill and what federal nutrition programs are going to look like over the next handful of years. With that, Mr. President, I would yield back and notice the absence of a quorum.